Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're going to be creating exactly what you see on screen, a bunch of really fun donuts. And this week's tutorial is brought to you by Tamara, who left a comment on one of my YouTube videos asking if I could create a donut tutorial. And I thought it would be really fun because this actually covers a bunch of techniques that I use on a daily basis. So even if you don't have an appetite for some digital donuts, I promise you'll walk away with some tools that you'll be able to use well into the future. So as you can see on screen, this is the final outcome of our tutorial. So we're just going to jump right in. And the first thing we're going to do is start with our Blob brush tool, because that is the tool that we're going to be using for the majority of these donuts. So the really cool thing about a blob brush versus a brush, I just want to go over that really quick because there is a huge difference. So if I draw with the blob brush, you can see I've already got a circle. And if I hit my close bracket key on my keyboard to make it bigger, if I draw with it, I can draw anything, right? It ends up, if I select it, you can see it's a shape. It creates a shape out of it. Whereas if I do the same thing with just a regular brush, I'm left with a, whoa, that's crazy. Let's fix that. All right, there we go. That's a little more normal. You end up with a stroke. So you can do anything with your stroke path. You can apply a different type of brush stroke to it. You can increase the stroke of it, but you don't have a stroke at all if you use the blob brush tool. You get shapes with the blob brush, you get strokes with a regular brush. So for this one, it's really important that you use the blob brush. The keyboard shortcut for the blob brush tool is Shift B. Okay, so we're gonna grab a color. I'm just using your basic default swatches here, so it'll be really easy to replicate exactly what I'm doing. And if you don't see your swatch palette, you can get to it by going Window, Swatches, and this same thing will pop up. If you don't have any colors in it, don't worry, you can just drop this down, go Open Swatch Libraries, Default Swatches, and you can do Print or RGB depending on what mode you would like to create these in. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab this kind of medium brown here, and I'm gonna grab my blob brush and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And for this, instead of me I could just draw a circle, but donuts, the good ones anyway, are made by hand, right? So we wanna make these look like that they're authentic and they're made by hand. So that's why I'm gonna draw this all by hand with my mouse. And definitely feel free, if you have a Wacom, to use your Wacom. I'm just gonna use the mouse just to change things up a little bit. So I'm just gonna draw my circle, and it's not gonna be perfect, and it's probably not gonna be pretty, but I'm gonna go for it. All right, and the other cool thing about the blob brush is if you wanna add on to your shape, all you have to do is continually draw on it, and like it becomes part of your same shape, so you don't have to worry about having multiple shapes on top of multiple shapes. So that's really cool about it too. So I'm just going to clean this little edge a little bit. It is kind of hard to see, so it's a little deceptive where you're drawing. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to go with this. All right, so here's my donut. And as you can see up here, I added a little bit of depth there. You can totally do that if you want. I'm just going to hit Alt, and then I hit the top arrow key, and then I released everything, and then I'm just going to hit the side arrow key, the right arrow key. And then I'm going to eyedropper this. It's actually, yeah, it's this one over here in your swatches palette. And then I'm gonna send it to back, Command Shift open bracket. And that's the keyboard shortcut to send it to the back, or Control Shift open bracket if you're on a PC. Okay, so now we're gonna draw in our frosting. So we're gonna do the exact same thing that we did with drawing the donut, only this time we're gonna get a little funky because you can see the little edges are more frosting-like. So I'm just gonna grab a pink, and I'm just gonna slide this down a little bit to lighten it up. And then I'm just gonna come around and make it look like icing. Okay, so the outside looks good, but the inside looks really not so good. So all I'm gonna do is come in here and just clean this up so it looks more like a circle, like it goes around the donut. All right, so that looks like a frosted donut. And once again, you can do the same thing with adding a little bit of depth. So I'm just gonna select my frosting, hold Alt, up arrow key, release everything, hit the right arrow key, and then this time I'm just gonna hit Command or Control open bracket, so that sends it back one. So whatever it was in front of it just goes behind that first one instead of all the way to the back, because we want it above our donut. And then I'm just gonna eyedropper this color, which is this one over here in your swatches palette. All right, so we're gonna move on to this kind of streaked icing look, and then we'll come back and put sprinkles on. So I'm just gonna select everything all while I'm dragging, hold shift, and now I'm just gonna grab my blob brush once again, and we're gonna grab some cyan, and I'm gonna reduce the size of my blob brush by hitting the open bracket key way down, and just as if you were in a little donut shop, you're just gonna draw really loosely and make your little design. All right, so now obviously we don't want this in the center of the donut. We want this part to go away, but we want it to look continuous. So I'm just gonna select this donut, not the shadow, the actual donut, Command C, released, Command F or Control F, and then I'm gonna hold Shift, select the icing, right click, make clipping mask, and that'll mask it right on that donut. All right, so now is the fun part. Now we get to put some sprinkles on it. So up here, I've pulled a couple color palettes for these sprinkles. So I've got these pill-shaped sprinkles, or your typical sprinkles, and then I've got some circular kind of confetti-looking sprinkles. So I'll show you how I made these, and I'll give you the color builds for these. So these were actually RGB. So that's the purple one. If you look over here, you can pause the video and copy these down if you want to use the same colors. Here's that dark blue one, here's the light blue one, the green, and the yellow. And then this one is the seafoam, the yellow, kind of coral, orange, and like light blue. Okay, so for these pill-shaped ones, all I did was come over here and grab my rounded rectangle tool. Let me zoom in a little. And all I did was freehand this out so it looked like a sprinkle. And then I droppered my colors and rotated them around. And you get the idea. You get to make sprinkles pretty quickly when you do that. And you can vary them in size too. I kept them all uniform. That actually probably would have looked even cooler. And then same thing with these little confetti circular ones. I just grabbed my ellipse tool, hold shift to keep it a perfect circle. And you can do different sizes if you want. For me, I just kept the same size. So all I did was hold Alt, click, and drag, and that'll keep your same size. And then I went in, selected, and then eyedroppered the different colors that I wanted to apply to these. So that's all there was to it, and then I just arranged them all funky, but I won't do that here just to save time. So once you have your little cluster, it kind of looks like a square, but it's not a square, because that's important too. You want it to feel pretty random, because what we're going to do next needs to make it feel, when you surround the donut with it, that it wasn't ever like in a square shape or anything like this. It's just totally random, like sprinkles are. So the way that you make a sprinkle scatter brush is you select your sprinkles that you want to use. You come over here to your brushes palette, and if you don't see this, you can get to it by going Window, Brushes, and all you want to do is hit this little icon down here for a new brush. I don't know why that said delete brush. It's supposed to be new brush. Anyway, choose scatter brush right here and hit OK. And all of this I want to keep consistent. I'm fine with all of it, and you can name it up here if you want. I'm just gonna leave it as scatterbrush 1, hit OK. And as you can see, it shows up right here, which is really important because that's where you're going to find it later when you want to use it. And then we're going to do the same thing with these circular sprinkles. So I'm going to select all of them, and then I'm going to hit this little new, there we go, new brush, click scatter brush, hit OK, and then hit OK again. And now we've got our 2 little sprinkle brushes in there. So the way that we use these sprinkles is I'm going to hit N on my keyboard, and this activates my pencil tool, and I'm just going to draw a circle around the area where I want to spread those sprinkles. And I want to make sure I close it off. See how these points aren't touching? All I have to do is draw on the same path and connect the paths, and then I'll have a continuous path. And then I'm just going to click on the sprinkles that I want to use. And those look really, really big. And the cool thing about this is you can reduce the size of your sprinkles by adjusting the stroke. So you saw I didn't have a stroke at all on this, but it always defaults to 1 point. So if I reduce this to half a point, 0.5, whoops, my cord for the mic is in the way, 0.5, there you go. Now that seems a little more realistic. And if you want to make it even a little bigger, maybe 0.75, that looks nice. Feels really random, maybe a little bit smaller. I like small sprinkles, 0.6. All right. That's a nice happy medium. And then you can do the same thing over here if you'd like. I'm going to keep this plain icing, but I want to show you how to apply the circular one. So if I just select the same path that I used and I come back over here to my brushes palette, I'll choose those sprinkles, and those are a little smaller. So I'm going to increase my weight, and that's too big. So let me try 0.75 for this. Whoops, that wasn't 0.75. There we go. That looks better. Maybe a little bigger, 0.8. You know, a lot of it is just fussing around, playing around with it. And you can even come in here, and if you don't like the way things are kind of hitting, if you grab that stroke again and you hit N, you can adjust your line. And now you can change kind of where the sprinkles are being placed. So that's kind of cool too. So you're not stuck with whatever your initial path looked like. So it's really easy to adjust and perfect exactly how you want things to look. All right, so now to the last really fun part is bringing in some texture, because really brings it to life. If I zoom in here, you can see I'm actually using my paint streak textures, which if you've kept up with some of the tutorials on my channel, you'll see a bunch of different tutorials using these paint streak textures, and they look like frosting. Like, look at how awesome this is. So it ended up being really fun, and I don't even want to admit to how many donuts I made with putting textures in here, because it is really cute. So I'll show you just a few of them so you can get the idea. I promise I won't get carried away here, but I want to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to go File, Place, and I'm going to bring in a couple of my textures. And I'm using the circular textures in the kit. The kit comes with a bunch of abstract and wavy and circular textures, and they also come as JPEGs and transparent PNGs. So I'm going to use the transparent PNGs because then I just have the texture on its own, and I can come through here and you can see some of these could definitely pass for frosting, and they're really pretty when they're mocked up. So I'm just going to grab any texture. This one looks exciting, so I'm just going to put that one in here. And these textures are really big, so they print really nice. So I'm just going to scale them down so they fit into our donuts. So I'm holding Shift and Alt at the same time, and that scales it uniformly. And then if I send this all the way to the back, I'm hitting Command Shift open bracket or Control Shift open bracket if you're on a PC. And then I'm gonna hold Shift because while this is selected, I also want to select the icing. So I'm gonna hold Shift and then right click, make clipping mask, and then it's in there. That's really fun. So you can also rearrange where it is. So say I want this texture to move over a little bit because I feel like it's too light down here and I want to balance it a little more. I'm gonna hit A on my keyboard. I'm gonna hover over, and when I get this big like X box, I guess, that means that's where the texture is. So then I can click, and then you can drag it a little bit. And that way you don't have to release your clipping mask and redo the whole thing. You can just nudge it around. So that's really easy. And then I'll just bring in 2 more textures so you can see how that looks. Just really quick. I'll do, let's see what this blue one looks like. Bring a blue one in. Once again, I'm holding Shift and Alt, and that scales it proportionally. And zoom in, send it to the back, Command Shift or Control Shift open bracket. Hold Shift, select the icing, right click, make clipping mask. And that's fun. And then we'll do one more. File, Place. Let's make this one orange. Which one's? That one's good. Place. Zoom back out. Shift, Alt, click, scale, zoom in. And make sure your texture covers all of where your icing is, that we don't have any missing spots. I'm going to Command Shift open bracket or Control Shift open bracket on a PC. Hold Shift, click your icing, right click, make clipping mask. And now this color doesn't go so well. So since this is already in a clipping mask, I can't select it on its own, but I can hit A on my keyboard and click just my blue icing. And now I can change this to like maybe it's a red icing. Or actually, you know what? I think pink would look better. We're at a donut shop and all. All right, so that's how to make donuts in Illustrator using a blob brush, a scatter brush, and clipping masks with texture. So we went over a lot of things in a really short amount of time and came out with something really cute and really Awesome. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe. I release a new design tutorial every single Tuesday, and make sure to check out my blog, every-tuesday.com, for even more tutorials, and there's a bunch of design freebies there too. And I will leave a link for those paint streak textures if you're interested, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.